Hey guys, welcome to Aditi's live session. I'm here to introduce Aditi.
Hi everyone.
Guys, welcome back to another session of Main Gate Darbar. And this time we have Aditi there, and she's been doing some amazing work with her bags. And over the years, she's focused on that and made a big name for herself under her brand. So we've got Anuj who will be hosting the session, and Anuj has been working behind the scenes to get to know more about Aditi, so we can sort of get that journey out for us. And as we always say, the host plays a very important part for getting the best out of the speaker. So now I'm going to get Anuj onto the call. And over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Ajit. Thank you, Aditi, for, I don't know why you picked me up, but I would have absolutely, the first thing when Ajit told me, made a group, he showed me the three people in the group. I said, you, me, and Aditi. I said, who's the person who's hosting? The you. I said, I'm going to cry. It's not possible. Because ऐसा हो नहीं सकता क्योंकि आयाज
it's just as a host, huh? Don't get excited. It's just for this session.
No, I thought Ayaz absolutely deserved this honor because जितना connection Ayaz में और अजीत घर में रहा है उतना तो मतलब मुझे इतनी मेहनत करनी पड़ी जानने पर Ayaz तो मतलब एक detail पहचानता है. So it would have been so much easier for Ayaz, but thank you very much. that will help. So
my pleasure.
Thank you, Aditi, and yeah. So my little interaction with Aditi has been largely after NID. NID में we went on a date to CTF, Chills, Thrills and Frills, which is what it was called. So her first year, second date was me. I don't remember if she picked me up.
I dated you. How strange! I dated you. I picked you.
Yeah, so she picked again.
Just as an organizer, I want to specify this whole session is to inspire people. It's not a personal session, guys.
Rajit, relax. Let him get into the groove, and then
okay, cool. I shouldn't get possessive also.
Yeah. So the person I knew, Aditi, in NID was just very quiet, and I didn't really interact much. She had the privilege of her interaction went to many other people, and mostly her batchmate, and then she interacted a lot with PG people, especially being in product design. And then I met her really much later when I was doing Lakme fashion shows. When Aditi started coming in limelight, Vitasta, and she proudly carries her brand with her name, Aditi Vitasta. So actually, that's how I remember her also now. And then her work coming out, shining through. She started winning some awards. But recently, I spent a lot more time when I met her again in Jaipur at Juhi's place, and she's suddenly become more grounded, and she's gone into teaching, and there's a different personality of her altogether, which I think a lot of people don't know it yet, and I would be very happy to let that part of her come out through this. So thank you, Aditi, for letting me share your story and you sharing your story to me. So, I mean, one thing that has always fascinated me about anything, especially people from Kashmir.
Thing going on.
It's always been Kashmir for me, and you come from Kashmir. And that's been one very fascinating aspect of my life towards anybody who's from Kashmir. So tell us, you weren't born in Kashmir. You weren't born in Kashmir. Where were you born?
Kolkata. Calcutta at that time.
But there is no Bengali features of yours. How did you find?
No, I don't have any Bengali features, but I know how to curse in Bengali if that helps. But my dad was actually so my dad got his first job was with this company called ICI, which is a chemical company. He's from IIT Delhi, and he's a chemical engineer. He studied in Delhi. And when when my mom was pregnant, they moved to Calcutta, and he started working with the company, and that's where I was born. We used to live in a little suburb, a little away from Calcutta called Rishra. That's where all the company headquarters and the factory was there. So I was in Calcutta. I lived in Calcutta for a little over a year. And then my dad left and came back to Delhi and set up his own business. So I essentially grew up in Delhi. My schooling,
Just want to check on that Poche thing.
my what?
No,
Oh, sorry.
I just finished that call with that Shantanu. अभी 6 to 7.
Basra, put your
अब
mic
वो
on
NVD का
mute.
सेशन है इधर का.
Mute kar.
He's doing it जानबूझ के, I'm telling you.
He's such a
I
good
know,
friend
I
of
know.
yours.
I'm just gonna keep
Multitasking.
going. I know. So
Such a good
anyway,
friend.
Go ahead.
so that's where I grew up. I grew up in Delhi. I've been in Delhi most of my life. I also studied at MSVV Modern School Vasant Vihar. And in fact, Chats and Pallavi Arora were that senior to me. That's not how I came to know about NIT. I came to know about NIT from a completely different source. But it's, yeah.
No, so you studied in modern. The modern is very popularly known for very, up-class Delhi people and very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Modern is very posh and full of people full of drugs apparently. Posh and drugs. That was what modern was known for. But I joined in 11th and 12th. Actually, I used to be in a ICSE school. So I studied till the 10th in Frank Anthony Public School, which was an Anglo school. And for some reason in Delhi at that time, all parents had this sort of idea that you couldn't apply for you had to switch from ICSE to CBSE because it improved your chances of your kids to get into good colleges. And that was completely bogus, but that's what my parents also did. So I switched. 11th, 12th was in Modern Vasant Vihar. So I wasn't there very long. And I didn't make too many friends. It's a fairly sort of, cliquey school in that sense. It's very sort of Delhi, rich kids, industrial type families kind of thing, right? Business families primarily. So yeah, it was a bit of a change.
But where did you spend your holidays? What was it like? I mean, the rest of the family was in Kashmir, I guess.
Yeah, no. So I'm Kashmiri. I'm a Kashmiri Pandit. My parents are from Kashmir, from Srinagar particularly. They both grew up in Srinagar, and they studied there. The school that they came for. I can see the comments. I'm not going to look at them, because they're really making me laugh, but I'm just gonna keep going. So they grew up there, but like I said, my dad came to IIT Delhi to study chemical engineering, and but we have very strong family ties in Kashmir, and I've got a little bit of a presentation ready, and I'm going to show you a little bit about my childhood.
Yeah, share it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my happiest memories are a lot of them are connected to Kashmir, even till today, from childhood to today. So let me start. Let me just try and share screen now and giving you a little bit of an idea. Can you see that? I think that's clear, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to go over the slides. I'm not going to spend too much time on everything, but I'm just going to give you a little insight into different stuff that's made an impact in my life. So let me start with, telling for people who don't know anything about me and my background. So I'm a designer and an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur some time back. Like Anuj said, I've recently got into teaching. I'm also a bag lady because I think that moniker has now stuck. I've been doing bags for so long, and that's been a very sort of a key feature of my work. I love mozzarella, deeply love mozzarella. And now I actually have sort of very recently become more interested in talking about design, sustainable systems. I've spent my entire career in fashion, and the fashion industry is in many ways highly unsustainable, as a lot of you know, but I study it, and I study, especially in leather goods, what are the unsustainable systems, what are the sustainable ways of producing leather and leather craft, because that's really been my forte. I've essentially developed my niche into leather and leather goods design. So
Before you forget, I remember. I want to remind. Before you, I forget. I want to tell people. She took me to this place in Jaipur, outside Jaipur, to this tannery, where the bodies of the animals have rotting for days, and I couldn't even get out of the car, and she's actually braving and standing inside that. It wasn't even tannery, it was an open place, but it was so foul. It was so foul. I went like 5 kilometers away from that space walking so that I can avoid that place because the car had to say. She was braving and standing there. I don't know how you manage that.
Those places, I think I've just like, it's like in my DNA now. Those places are awful. They stink so much, and it's actually, they have to tan the leather right then and there for you. I mean, it's tough. You've got to be a bit of a soldier to get into those sort of things. But yeah, sorry Anuja, I know it was a bit of a shock. It was a bit traumatic.
I only liked it better to figure that you can actually do it. I wouldn't do it. So yeah. This is brilliant. Okay, go ahead.
So let me start by just giving you. I mean, these are a couple of pictures of me. I'm a middle child. I have 2 other siblings. We're all, that's me in Srinagar on the top, and I think me in Calcutta at the bottom. I'm the middle one. So we're quite close as siblings. We were quite close as kids, but also now we're very close. Although we live in different parts of the world. My sister lives in New York, my brother lives in London, and I live in India. So we don't get to see them that often, but we stay connected. These are sort of memories of mine from childhood. My most happiest memories have been trips to Kashmir. So my grandparents still lived there until 1990. My parents had moved out, so our vacations were spent in Kashmir, and it was spent for at least 10 years between, let's say, from the time, almost the time that I was born till the 1990s. So it was about 8 years that every year we would be in Kashmir for about 2 months. And we have an extended family, so I have cousins, etc. So everybody would travel together. And my happiest memories of Kashmir are the rivers. I really love the rivers there. And we have my grandfather had a hotel in Pahalgam. So I used to, I was quite a shy, sensitive child, and I spent a lot of time by myself, just hanging around rivers. And I have this thing, and I told Anush this, that I used to sit by the rocks and collect all those differently shaped, colored pebbles, any different shape or color that I could find. And my mother used to give me a plastic bag, and she would warn me not to fill it too much. And by the end of it, like hours would go by, and everybody had to leave and pack up. And it was a van. It was like a Volkswagen van. I don't know if you can see in the midst. So there used to be a lot of stuff because there were a lot of kids, and there were like 3-4 families. So there was never any space. So, I used to come with a 10-kilo bag, and my mom always used to throw them back into the river, and I used to hate her doing that. But every year I used to do the same thing. So a lot of my memories are about family and Kashmir and spending time trekking, camping, going to Pahalgam, Kokarnag, all these places. I learned how to build a fire with pine cones. I know how to do that because I did it as a kid. I know things about camping that I really don't do anymore, but I always remember them from my time in Kashmir. This is now this is an interesting thing. This is actually what still keeps us connected to Kashmir in some sense. My family, my dad's side of the family. So we have a apple orchard in a village called Romu in the Pulwama district, and this orchard has been in my family for a very, very long time. There is a Shiv temple, if you can see, in the middle of the orchard. The orchard is about 20 acres. There's a Shiv temple with a Shivling in the middle of the orchard, and that stone was laid by my ancestors in 1836. The first stone was laid then. And every year since then, my family has performed a Havan there every year since that time. Some person or member of my family has done that. My grandfather even did that in the 90s when it was not safe and nobody was going there, but he used to go, and this is my Dadaji, so he used to live there in the summer and come back to Delhi in the winter because it used to get really cold. But he stayed in Kashmir throughout the 90s, and it was very dangerous for him to be there. But he was from the army, so he was like a soldier, so he felt that was, he wouldn't leave. And he went, And so for 180 years, somebody's been performing a Havan at that Shiv temple. And the orchard actually belongs to a trust. So it will continue down the generations as long as we can keep a connection to the valley. And that is our most, everybody's left, all our relatives are left, there's nobody there. But this is our main connection to Kashmir, and I hope it stays. And 2020 was actually the first year. Yeah.
When did you last go there?
Last year. 2020 is the first year that puja has not been done by anybody in like 180 years. It's a bit crazy, but because nobody could go.
You can. I am also Pandit. You can take me next time. I'll do it.
I'll take you. Now you can go. So, but the date is gone. It was in June, so nobody could go. The flights weren't open at that time, and it was impossible to go to Kashmir. This is a picture of my grandfather, my paternal grandfather. Oh wait, guys, I need to put my computer on charge also. Shit, I forgot to charge it. Sorry. He was my paternal grandfather was a colonel in the army, Colonel S.K. Dhar. He's a very important part of our family. He passed away in 2014, and he used to send me chinar leaves every autumn of every year when he was there. He used to bring them back for me, and I've collected them over the years. So I'm a bit of a collector. I have memories which I've collected as a kid and over the years, which my grandfather is a huge part of that. And if you can see, the last slide is me basically sitting on the rocks, much older then, but I used to be, as a kid, I used to do the same thing. I would be on the river bank collecting stuff. So that kind of was, so my name actually, my full name is Aditi Vitasta Dhar. Vitasta is actually the name of the river, Jhelum. Jhelum is the Urdu word for the river. The Sanskrit word is Vitasta, and my grandfather gave me this name. He wanted a Kashmiri name for the name of my ex-boyfriend in Nepal. So put these whole things. That's just so random. Okay, no, it was not the name of my ex-boyfriend from Nepal or in Nepal. That is my name, and it's the name of the river in Srinagar. The Jhelum.
Sajid clearly told you not to look at the polls. So
I know, but it just popped up, and I'm on that slide. So yeah, so my middle name comes. It's a middle name. All of them did know that. Yeah, well, most people know that now. But 18% said ex-boyfriend Nepal. I'm sure that's Ayaz and just Ayaz. So yeah, so that's where my middle name comes from, and that eventually became the name of my brand. Coming to NID, I'm just going to jump forward. NID actually wasn't my first choice. I wanted to, as a kid, I think my parents knew that I was pretty creative and I would go into some creative field. And so they left it to me. And I actually thought that I would go into either fashion or architecture, because I was a bit of a bookworm and a nerd, and an architecture nerd.
There's another thing common between us is that you got introduced to NID through Rahul Ajmera.
Yeah.
And my first contact of NID was also Rahul Ajmera.
Yeah.
That's quite funny. So how did that happen? Where did you meet Rahul Ajmera, and how did you come to know about it?
Well, I actually met. Actually, Rahul was a batchmate of my sister in school in Sardar Patel Vidyalaya, and he was an SPV, and he actually told my sister one day about NID, because I think he had maybe spoke. He was trying to join or something like that, or he was giving an exam or something. And she came and told my dad, and my dad came and told me and said, why don't you try NID as well? So it was actually Ajmera. He was my sister's classmate, and it came from him, of all people. And he, so that's how I found out. That's how I found out about NID. So I went for the exam. I went for that written exam that you have. Then the workshop, of course, and I think I was so nervous in my interview. That interview was so, I lied for my entire interview, I think. Whatever they said, I agreed with. Even if they said something that wasn't true, I said it is. Because I was so scared of that psychoanalyst. There used to be a psychoanalyst, right? He used to sit there and not say anything.
Yeah.
And he would just sit there and keeps looking at you. And first I thought that he was trying to break, he wouldn't break eye contact. So he freaked me out basically. So, but we were the last batch. So they told me that, why don't you hang out for a couple of days more? And the results will be out soon. So it was the last batch which was getting interviewed. So my mom and I went and we chilled out. We went to Law Garden. We saw the Gagras. I bought like one Gagra and all that hanging around. And then I think the next day they got the list out and my name was on it. And that made me super happy because I kind of forgot completely about SEPT and architecture after that. Like I didn't give a shit. So I was like, okay, fine, I'm done. Like I don't have to do any more work. And this happened before the board results came out, I think. So when I came back to Delhi, I think I went to see my board results to see if I passed. And my dad took me and he said, you want to have a look? And I was like, it doesn't matter. I've already gotten, who cares? I've passed, it's fine. So all these kids are like crowding around that message board where all the results are come out. And I'm like chilling in the back and my dad is going and looking at my tests, my scores. So it was quite funny that it sort of became then just something that, then I just said, okay, let's do this and let's get, and that's how I got to NID. Also, my window
was NID a shock for you? Who did you meet first at the NID when you entered NID? Do you remember anybody at NID first?
I bumped into Bose and Shaz in the workshop time, and they freaked me out. Like Shaz also, I don't know, he just kept staring at me the whole time. He never broke eye contact, and he just kept looking at me. And I was like 16. I hadn't even turned 17. And I was like, I have never seen a more intense man in my life. And that's the first thing I remember thinking, that this man is the most intense creature I have ever met. And of course, like Shaz, everybody had, sorry, I hope he's not on this, but that doesn't matter. It's all in the past. But we had a huge crush on, I had a huge crush on Shaz. But he and Bose, and I met Bose, who kept trying to, he basically tried to rag me. They both tried to rag me. And I think I sat with them in the old canteen for about an hour, and then they left me and I said, okay, now go, you've been traumatized enough, leave. And so that was my those are the first two individuals that I met.
And then you've been constantly ragged after that by Ayaz. So that's there.
Yes. And here he is again to rag me yet again. And not on auto mute, which I explicitly requested for, but he is not. So I will have to live with that and continue the session. But yeah, Ayaz has been a very fixed feature of NID. But NID also was quite, it was a lot about my friends, and it was a culture shock to me because I had a fairly middle class, straightforward upbringing. And although my parents were very liberal, they weren't very conservative. But I had never been to a place like that. And 17, I had just turned 17. I went there, and it was it was quite incredible. So that was, if I think about it now, it was quite a culture shock for me. It was a many of firsts. I had an interesting time in my first and second year. So let's leave it at that. It was interesting.
I think you should pursue this question.
No, go pursue.
No, but what was your usual? You were a very quiet person. I remember, like you walked around, but you did started exploring life in NID. It's not like I did. I think just the culture of it. It was something very new for me, like I mentioned. I started understanding what it meant to be a person, to have an identity, to be on my own, to produce work, to work with my hands. And being with PD, all PD students will tell you, we spent a lot of time in workshops. We spent a lot of time making stuff. So I learned all these things completely just from scratch. Guys, I think I need to plug my charger in. Can you give me 1 second? Sorry, guys. I realized the thing has fallen off. Give me 1 second. Meanwhile, Ayash,
Fun.
you're
We'll have some
welcome
fun
to
meanwhile.
share a story.
Yeah,
Um,
Basra,
Ayash.
this is your moment to talk.
I think he's run away.
he's playing prank. He's sending some messages to Aditi separately. I'm sure he's doing something.
Yeah, don't
Well,
encourage him. He'll take over the
Ayash.
screen.
He's cracking his next big deal.
No,
Okay.
Raj, don't ask him anything. I saw that. No, but sorry guys for that. Coming back to the question. No, NID I would have to say for somebody like me, it was really life changing. I learned a lot of things very organically. I didn't spend a lot of time in class. I spent a lot of time drinking chai and just fapping around. But it was the first of many. It was the first time I was, meeting people very unlike me from different backgrounds. It was the first time I fell in love. It was the first time I got my heart broken. It was the first time I learned how to, like I said, be responsible for myself, for my work. It was the first time somebody challenged me to stand up for myself, which I still feel I didn't do too much. I think I was quite unsure of my work as a student. I wish I had more confidence when I was a student, I'm also very, I think I was very open-minded. I have a very high degree of openness, and I think that helped me as a student. For better or worse, I took it all in, and that was kind of, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing to have. It's a good quality.
Why did you pick up product design?
I always, like, after Foundy, when we had to decide, I think I always knew I'd get into product design. I just liked the idea of, I liked all my courses which were more analytical. I liked building things. I had no interest in graphic design. I thought textiles was too damn hard. Like, I thought I would like really suck at it because I won't have like the perseverance to like do textile design, because I was very much in awe of it. So I knew it would be industrial design, and I think that was very organic. I just felt that was the right place for me to be, and as it turns out, I think it was, because I'm very much a product designer. At the heart of it, I am. I understand. Even the work that I do now, I like to build things. I understand how things are built. I'm very sort of interested in that kind of stuff. It's a natural affinity to it, I think.
That sounds so. So your journey at NID was fairly reasonable. Were you thrown out at NID? Were you asked to leave NID?
No, but I did have a bit of a hiccup in Foundy, at the end of Foundy. I don't think most people know this, but at the end of Foundy, in my final jury, Aditi, who was our coordinator, basically told me that my drawing skills weren't up to the mark. So she told me, you might have to repeat a year. And I got so freaked out. I said, no, don't do this to me. Mere maa baap kya kahenge? And she was like, so she actually helped me out. She told me, look, you know what? I've set up something for you in Delhi. There's a professor in NIF Delhi called Amrish Babu. I've talked to him. Go back in your summer vacations. Every day, go to class. He'll give you stuff to do. He'll give you drawing exercises. Just sit there and do them. Come back. We'll have another mini jury again. And if we feel you sort of really pulled up your socks, we'll let you go on. We'll let you pick product design and move on to first year. So I went back, and every day in that bloody heat, I used to go NIF Delhi, where there were no students. I used to, like a chomu, I used to go sit there in like an empty class, and Babu used to come and say, Aditi, do this. Today's class is this. And I used to sit there. But I have to say, I have made the best friends like from NIF during that time, because these students used to come in and look at me like one chump sitting there, and they would come and say, you don't even belong to this college. Why are you here? And I had to explain to them with great embarrassment that what had happened. But Avinash, who's actually a good friend of Ayaz and mine, Avinash met me. He's Blot. I think he's, I don't know if you guys know him, but Avinash runs this, he's also in Goa. Music. But I met, he does music. He does his multimedia stuff, and he's really a great guy. So I met him because he wanted in. So that was, I think, my only hiccup with my studies as a student. at NIV. But then I came back, I did a lot of work. I came back, I presented to Aditi and she said, "Take it." And I was like, okay.
It's tough. I guess, I mean, I've also had hiccups at it, right? And it's tough at times too. But so what motivated you to keep going on? You love the place or?
Terror mostly. No, it was no, it was good. I wanted to be there. I just felt somehow that I was not always very sure about the kind of stuff that became better as I started becoming, that became better in fourth year, fifth year, where I was more in tune. But I think in my first, second year, it was quite tough for me to sort of find my space, find my feet. But I think it was, I mean, I wanted to be there for it.
That's pretty much your going to diploma project was pretty much the second phase, the end of your second phase of life, which is like when you almost became 20. So your life has been 10, 20, 30, 40. So your diploma project became So would you like to share the screen? And
I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the screen that was there. Can you guys see it? Should I continue? Yeah. Okay, so that was my batch. That's my batch. We were all very young and very silly and stupid, but we were all figuring it out. I think I have very fun memories of it. I was close to a lot of people in my batch. I think I was fairly close to most of them. I had, of course, my gang of friends. They know who they are. This is obviously Cultural Day. There are some people who are missing here. We've missed a few of our batch mates.
Large Kala in the front and there's this is Mesh Terrace. The first
this is Mesh. I think it's one of the Mehfile Dhumpuks that Basra used to organize. And I think this picture was taken maybe around that time, maybe first year, second year. And look at us. We're all so crazy. We're so young. And that's me. I don't know what's happening with my hair. It looks like I got electrocuted, but whatever. I had questionable fashion choices also, which is ironic considering the work I do now. But and yeah, that geeky me is over there on Cultural Day, and I think we're a good bunch. We were quite different from the batch before us, and it was a good bunch of people to have around. I think this is one of the visits my parents did when I was there just before, I think third year maybe. And I think my parents just couldn't figure NID out. I think my dad, although he was a hippie in college, but he was most afraid. You know how it is? It's funny, but it's ironic. The people who have done all sorts of things in their life, the parents, they're the ones who are most afraid for their kids. Because he was in IIT in the 60s. I haven't added his platform boots and his flare pants and all that. He used to play in a band called Hypnotic Eye in IIT during the 60s. He also joined when he was very young. But I think the only advice he told me was don't do drugs or don't get into drugs because I'm terrified you will get into drugs. And I was like, that's good advice, Dad. I look like the person who will get into drugs. But
you did want to be born in the 1960s, no? At some apartheid. You want to be grown.
Yeah, man. I think I'm a little bit of a hippie at heart there. I'm very, I grew up because my dad was, my dad is a musician and I grew up with a lot of 60s music. He introduced me to that generation. And both my siblings are classically trained in piano. So we are a very musical family. And a lot of my musical education, for good or bad, came from my dad. So I was very in tune with the hippie generation. I felt like those were my people. So I was quite at heart. I think I still am, but I think that's what he suspected. I think my dad suspected that. That's why he gave me that advice.
What's that machine on the side?
That's I think this is my final diploma project. This was not the final diploma project, sorry. This was my final jury before, this was actually, I think Ayaz and I had we had the juries at the same time. But this was my pre-dip jury where I had done this mobile blood unit, transport unit for blood camps, for donation camps. And it was basically something that you could transport in a Maruti van or in a small car. And it had sort of upper storage unit and a bottom refrigeration unit, and I had to figure out what kind of refrigeration was needed. So this was my final project in my pleated jewelry. And so, I mean, most of my projects were basically industrial based, and in PD, that's what you did. You mostly picked, sort of technical projects. My final project, my diploma project, happened to be was a complete switch. I actually went to Holland for 6 months. I essentially wanted to do something in eyewear. That was my goal. And my dad knew somebody from Mex, which is this brand that used to be in Europe. It was founded in Holland, in the Netherlands. And he knew somebody in that company, and he said, why don't you try applying to them? So I wrote to them about, can I do an eyewear project with you? Because they did clothing, accessories. They were like the competitors of Esprit. If you guys remember Esprit, that German brand that used to be there, that high street brand in the 1990s and the early 2000s in Europe. Yeah. So Esprit and Mex used to be competitors, and they were both high street brands. And I wanted to do eyewear. They didn't have an eyewear project, but they said, you know what, we have a bags project. Why don't you just come? And I was like, it's Holland. I'm a hippie. Let's go. So I went there, and I was there for about 6 months. They had this beautiful building that their headquarters at that time was in this small town called Forschoten, which is just a small town closer to The Hague. And their office was done in this old building that was a silver works factory, because the Dutch had a big silver mining business in the old ages. So they had converted it into this beautiful building in the middle of a forest. And that's where I used to work with and the entire design team used to sit in this building. I lived in a student house for 6 months in a small town called Leiden, which was 10 minutes away from Forschoten. And Leiden is an amazing town. So it's a student town because it has a huge university culture. It has the University of Leiden, which is a very world famous university for law. And they had lots of student houses. So I stayed in a student house with a lot of other, law students from all over the world. And I can tell you something with absolute certainty: lawyers are party animals. They are unstoppable. They will party any time of day, anywhere in the world, at any spot that you pick. So I had a great time. I was doing my dip project at Mex and just partying it up in Holland, which was a lot of fun. And there's just another picture I want to quickly show you. This is a very nice thing about Leiden. And this is something that I found very endearing. So Leiden, if you walk on the streets, suddenly you will come across, the buildings have these engravings of poetry that are inscribed or engraved on the side of the walls. So, and they are done in all sorts of languages in the world, all sorts of poetry from well-known poets and not so well-known. And they've all been engraved. So if you walk around the town of Leiden, you just come across these beautiful poems in different languages. And there was one in Sanskrit also, I remember. I don't have a picture of that. Sorry, this is a stock photo because I couldn't find some of my pictures but this is the kind of stuff that I used to see. So this is a very nice part of town, a part of that city that I always remember, town. So Mex was great. Holland was amazing. It was work and it was partying and meeting a lot of international students, just meeting people from all over the world, just having fun, cooking, living in a student house, creating a lot of ruckus. We had the cops called once, I remember that. But this was all very, sorry, I'm going to skip that. That slide wasn't with me. So
why would you come back from such a place? Why would you come back?
I don't know. They threw me out. They said, "Aapka 6 mahine ka visa to khatam ho gaya, ab aap wapas ghar jaiye, please." And I really wanted to stay. I really wanted to go back to Holland. It's such a nice, I had such a great time. And as a student, it's just great to be there in that environment, with that culture. And they're very laid back. They're very tolerant of stuff. They don't create too much drama. And it's kind of very nice to be in a place like that, especially in a student house with international students. And it was just it was from NID. NID was kind of my student life, and then Leiden for 6 months was a small microcosm of another student life that I really enjoyed. And I realized that I enjoy that kind of, I like that sort of, and I have actually, over the period of years, I've always interacted with a lot of people from different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And I don't know if that's by accident or it's just serendipitous, whatever it is, but I had a great time. So I did some terrible looking bags. I'm sorry, those pictures are really bad. I did some not so great bags now that I look back to it, but that was I did like a bag collection with, as part of my DIP project, and I presented that for my final jury. These are some pictures from Convo, which I found. That's me with all my batchmates. There's Sandy with orange hair. I don't know why he had orange hair at that time. I think he was going through a phase or something. But there was a phase of color hair phase happening. There's an annoying person in the center who I'm going to completely skip through in that picture. And he's with his weird goatee. Basra, you have a really weird goatee in that photo, by the way. And it's also colored like blonde at the bottom, if you guys can notice. I don't know why it's got blonde tips at the bottom.
So Alsatian.
It's, yeah. And that's my diploma in product design, which is what I graduated with. And yeah, I'm going to stop here. I don't know if you have questions, because I'm just going to then go through the Tasta very quickly and show you the rest of.
Yeah, so basically came back, and and you went to high design. No, you worked with yourself. You went to high design.
Hey Yo-Yo. Okay, Yo-Yo can't see me. Okay, so I did. I went to. I came back home. I started actually working before high design. I started working with a brand in Delhi called USI, and I started doing bags for them and accessories. That was my first job after college. In 2003, I started. And I worked with them for a year, and then I went to high design. And that's really when I started my journey with leather. That's really where I started learning about leather as a material, leather bags as a product, manufacturing, design, retail, fashion, stuff like that, and accessories as something that I had chosen to do, because I think my MEX experience was so much fun for me that I realized that I'm going to do this because I enjoy it. I think I'll be good at it. I think those are the two things that I remember thinking, that I'll have a really good time if I do this, and I think I'll be very interested in learning more about this. So that's how I started. And then I went to high design. I got a call from Dilip Kapoor, and high design is based in Pondicherry. So I went. He invited me. I left. I left and moved to Pondi. The factories in Pondicherry, very close to Auroville. If you guys don't know much about Auroville and Pondi, they're basically two townships next to each other, all along the eastern coast. So you can drive so you fly into Chennai and then drive along the ECR to get to Pondi, and you'll hit Auroville before that. And I'm sure a lot of you know about Auroville, and there are a lot of NIDians who are now based in Auroville and have been there for a long time. So I worked with Pondi I worked with high design in Pondicherry for about a year and a half. Pondi. So yeah.
That your understanding of leather comes from there, and then that was, which year was that? That was
2005, 2004 to 2005 mid.
Then you came into Lakme around 2011, but all those years, how long did you work?
Yeah. So I before coming to Lakme, before starting with Asta, I actually for many years worked as a freelancer. I also worked as a designer, and I started manufacturing for other brands. So, I started working just as somebody because I wanted to get, I did freelance design work for a long time, but then I always felt that I wanted to start doing my own thing. So I decided to set up a small workshop and start designing and making stuff, but I needed bread and butter clients. So I started designing for other people. And so I worked with a number of brands in Delhi and a couple of international brands as well, and some fashion designers. And I basically started establishing their accessory lines. So they were mostly fashion designers who were doing clothing. I started doing accessories for them. Also because there weren't too many accessory designers at that time, right? So there weren't too many people taking that up and it wasn't even a discipline in NID at that point, right? It had come much later. I think it came after,
Yeah.
I think in my
NID
fourth
came
year
in
or something.
2002,
Yeah.
it came.
Yeah. In my last year is when it came in. So I did I did that for a couple of years, and I started my workshop. I started designing and producing for different brands. If you like, I'll go through the share
Yeah,
and
please,
show
sure,
you
please go ahead. Yeah.
basically what I was doing at that time. So I kind of started. This is Pondicherry. This is really where I started learning about leather as a material, because Pondi had the factory was there, the tannery was there. I was working with karigars, and that actually one important thing that happened was that I started working with artisans. I started working with craftsmen. I started working with karigars on the shop floor. You know, long hours. I learned how to build something from scratch. I used to go to the tannery. I used to make visits to the tannery with Dilip. I understood how leather is made. I understood how leather is tanned, commercial leather. I saw how chemicals that were involved, the processes that were involved, how polluting it is in some sense. So I got the training from the ground up, I think, and it was a very hands-on sort of a thing. So I don't have too many slides for high design. I'm sorry, I couldn't pull them out in time. But this was some of the stuff that I did for high design when I was there, and I was head of design for their domestic line. Between 2006 and 2011, I worked for a lot of other brands, like I said, designing and producing bags for them, because there weren't a lot of accessory designers around, and certainly not too many who knew much about leather bags or leather goods. In 2011, I launched my own brand called Vidasta. And I think what prompted me to do that primarily was that I didn't see enough homegrown leather accessory labels in India. I didn't see people doing leather products. I didn't see people doing product design in leather goods. I didn't see design become a very important aspect of handbags or leather products. A lot of it, most of it was taken from international design brands or designer brands and sort of copied. And India's primarily been a manufacturing hub. Design is never spoken about in this area. So I felt that it was kind of time to get into to launch a brand and to see where it goes and where I could really find my voice, find my expression, build a brand, find a position in the market, because there was an opportunity to build a brand like that. And I started in 2011, and I think the philosophy of the label also was that because I was a product designer, and this is an important point, I didn't look at it as a fashion product. I looked at it as a product. I looked at it as a design product. I looked at it as a product designer. So my purpose always was that the material and the product and the function of it should serve a purpose, and it should serve it well. And because I was so hands-on, I'm very comfortable with material. I have a affinity towards working with materials quite easily, and I enjoy that. So to me, leather was a beautiful material. It was natural, it was organic, it was extremely technical, it was versatile. You could do a lot of things with it. It had tradition, it had legacy, it had all these things. And that's what I wanted to show in my brand. And because I was working with karigars, because my training has been karigars, I wanted to have that human element, that human touch in my products. So I think that's what I I wanted to focus on that. I wanted to focus on building that into the brand. So that's what I did. And my aesthetic is very clean. I'm usually very sort of a minimalist, I would say. So I combined that with, I combined, I suppose, a sensibility of minimalism with handwork. And I think that was kind of where I started from.
Right.
I launched it in 2011 in a small stall in Lakme Fashion Week. This was the first collection we did. It was called the Antler Collection.
Beautiful.
And this was I think the inspiration for this is kind of, I can't remember now, but I think I was really inspired by doing a travel collection. And I wanted something to be again, it was material specific. So I thought, what is the, how do I combine the natural beauty of leather with the natural beauty of another organic material? And I thought wood. So I developed like a series of handles of these antlers, which were carved in teak wood. And they became the central focus of the collection. And this is what I launched in 2011 at Lakme Fashion Week. And I'll show you what, and you can see this, the top one is actually not covered. It's covered entirely in leather. So this is entirely hand covered. It's a wood piece, which is covered by hand in leather, which is an extremely complex thing to do. But the bottom picture, you can see it's teak wood in the tan bag, but the top one, this is the Weekender that we called it. So the top one is a leather coated one and the bottom one is a teak wood one. So these were these beautiful Weekenders and messenger bags that we made. You can see this is a process
good
of
combo, a good combo of product design and accessory design.
Yeah, I think this was a very inspired collection. I can't remember. I think I just dreamt it one day that I really wanted to do something that, I mean, it just combined materials in a way and gave it a distinction that I really wanted it to have, and gave it sort of like a sort of like an experimental feel. Like if somebody wanted to travel and they wanted to carry a bag, that's the kind of bag that they would carry, because there was a sense of experimentation and adventure in it. You can see the kind of different pieces we made. That's the Weekend on the left, and the middle one is a smaller duffel bag, and then yeah.
Aditi, did you kill anybody with these? That's the point.
Yeah, no, these are weapons of limited destruction, not mass destruction. I actually did poke, like I used to poke people in the metro if they got too close, like with the antler. So they're actually quite effective. If you're holding them in your hand, you can just stick it in front, and it's painful. It's a little painful. I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to lie about the fact that I did do it, because sometimes it was like the metros used to get really crowded and I'd get really annoyed, so I would just like stab people. But I have customers who've gone through through flights, and they've gone through security and they've been stopped because they were told that it was a weapon and they had to remove it from the bag. And they said, Aditi, you have to make it removable, because the security guys they think it's a weapon and they want it removed. So they know that, it can't be really, it's not really dangerous. And I'm like, well, actually it can't be removed, and just tell them it's actually most secure if it's on the bag rather than away from it. So, so that happened quite a bit. I had quite a few customers who said that. This is a workshop that all my work has happened over the years. We had a small workshop in Nevsarai, then in Ladossarai. It was about 8 to 10 people. All the work was done in-house. Everything was handmade. Of course, there were machines, but a lot of the stuff was handmade. These are some pictures of my mood boards, the kind of, the kind of stuff that used to be happening around the, the workshop at any given point of time. This is the planning. We used to sit and sort of make patterns and do season planning and collections and stuff like that. So these are just images from the workshop. These are some other collections that we did. Like I said, like I told you, the work was very clean, very minimal, but there was always an element of hand done. So we did all these beautiful hand braided rope that became harnesses, that became handles, stuff like that. So this is again the handmade element, again very clean products. But you can see that the rope actually became a functional part of the product, but it was all hand woven. You can see like and again, you can see I didn't use a lot of metal. Like I don't like to use a lot of hardware in my products. So I keep the look very clean. This is again, some of the inspirations that we got. So this was a collection we did for asymmetry, and that was kind of inspired from architecture, where you have asymmetrical lines and you kind of use that. So this was a wrap tote that I made for one of the collections for season 16. Then I made a trip to Bhuj in, I think, 2015 or 2016. And I went and I saw a lot of the leather work. So I don't know if whoever doesn't know, Bhuj has a lot of leather craft in it. They do a lot of punching work. And the desert landscape is beautiful. It's stark. Bhuj is a study in contrast in color, in texture, in how the blue the sky is and how barren the land is. And all the crafts that come out of it are all about contrast. It's about contrasting colors, contrasting textures. Everything about that place was just fascinating. And what I started developing was, this is what I started doing for my first runway show that I did, which was I got selected for LFDCI First Cut. This was on Amazon Fashion Week. And I started, if you can see, I started using that punch work detailing, which I saw in Fuji. And I was selected, so I built a small collection with that kind of look. But again, if you notice, the colors are very mute. They're almost bare. So the palette was very, very bare. It was sort of like the landscape. And you can see that there's, I started doing a lot of a very muted palette. This was also for Fashion Week. From 2015, from Fashion Week, then what happened was that I got invited to apply for the Vogue India Fashion Fund. And I took that same collection, which I had developed from my trip to Bhuj, and I developed it into a bigger, solid collection. And I won the Vogue India Fashion Fund for that collection. It was called Nomad. And you can see the picture and you can see the bags that she's holding. So I developed this entire collection with that punch work detail. And this was part of the show. We did a lot of harnesses. We did a lot of these messenger bags, etc. And that's, so I won this for the accessories category in 2016. And that's kind of the final collection that came out. So this is the bucket bag that we did with the punch work. You can see the same sort of details that have come up. So it was sort of an evolution of the kind of products that we were already doing. You can see that's the mess. We did a weekender bag where that was all punch work on the outside, but there's like a bold color or like an ikat color inside. And the cover, the leather panel on the outside gets removed. So it's actually a removable flap that you can remove and carry just the bag without the leather. And so we did this entire collection in, again, you can see that the palette was also a study in contrast, just nude or a shock of color, like a red or a deep, like a strong blue. And I sort of developed those sort of punches and those patterns, which I had seen in Touch for the collection. Then this went on to also become selected for the, there's a design award in New York, the Independent Handbag Design Award. It's a sort of a small thing, but they asked designers from all over the world to give in their submissions, and mine got submitted for the handmade category, and that's the same bag that I developed, which won the Vogue Fashion Fund also. So this was in 2017, and this was I mean I didn't win, but I was a finalist in that category. This is some of the press that we've got. Alia, like they used the Vitasta in Alia Bhatt's movie. Like she was carrying it, so I sold a lot of bags with that. Then I had like, so I got, the brand got a lot of press. The brand did really well organically as an Indian brand, as a leather brand. Yeah, so I'm not going to show, I'm just going to run through this now because I'm almost at the end of my presentation. This is just I'm just going to give you what, sorry.
No, so I'm just, I mean, I remember you were doing pretty fantastic, and then some point of time you decided to, because, we always look at stories of these great successes, and, we always discuss that. And in many cases, there, these stories where people reach a level and then not give up, but kind of decide to walk out of it, where people say, okay, this is enough and I want to do something more in life. And that phase came to you at pretty much at the peak of your, good career, a good sorted brand, everything was going fantastic. So what prompted you to kind of shift from there to a life of, you're teaching now and you're doing these fantastic talk shows, and where did that happen? Why did that happen?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So So I'm going to like just tell you what happened post 2017, and I think it's like a very important part of my career. And why I'm talking about it now also is because, like you said, a lot of people don't talk about stuff that has gone wrong or stuff that they walked away from. And I wanted to talk today about, at the end, about the stuff that I walked away from. So 2017 was like a very, it was a very, again, it was one of those seminal things that happened. Primarily, it was that that my work was doing really well, but we had a couple of hits. GST hit us in terms of running a business because I was a solo entrepreneur. I was doing it alone. I had no family backing in the sense that I built it from scratch. It was a small outfit. It wasn't very big. It was about 10, 12 people in total. But it took a lot out of me because I was doing everything. And then GST happened, demonetization happened, business took a nosedive. So there was a lot of pressure to sort of keep the work afloat, although the brand was really critically appreciated, but the cash flow was always a challenge, let's say. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad, but it hadn't stabilized to a point where I was confident that I could do it alone, and that was a big challenge for me. Like I think at the end of 2017, what had started happening was that my personal life started getting affected. I was with someone. I became a workaholic. Dedicated all my time to my business, and that affected everything else around. Plus, the cash flow and running the business was difficult on my own, and I often felt that I needed outside help, but I could never find it in time, or for some reason it just didn't work out. So 2017, I think at the end of 2017, I had a decision to make. I had to either decide that I had to put in serious money, so I had to raise funding for the business, so I would at least have the confidence that I had enough to grow it, because I did want to grow it. I did not want to continue in an incremental way, and I shut it down and I figured out a better plan. And because it was affecting my personal life also, it was a big thing. So I finally, at the end of 2017 November, I decided to close the factory down. I decided to close it. I closed it within a month. I think within 2 months. It was not a fun time, but I did sort of. I think I realized that I had to sort of step back from it. Because in some sense it had become very close to my own identity, and I think it was time to separate that a little bit. When if you get too close to it, there's a danger of a little bit of a burnout sometimes. And so I did, and it was difficult to do, but I think what happened was when I shut it down and I walked away from it, I took a sabbatical after 2017, and I just took some time off. And I then very slowly and carefully sort of got back into, basically that's how I got into teaching. I got an opportunity and I said, well, this seems like fun. I thought I would be terrible. Turns out I wasn't. Turns out I'm not too bad at it. And it's a challenge because I've learned a lot all through teaching. I've never been in that position before. And, when I was running my business, I had no perspective outside of Vitasta. I had no understanding of the world outside of Vitasta and everything connected to Vitasta and my business. So to step out of it and look at the world again is a very shocking thing. It's a very shocking thing in the sense of you realize how much else is going on in the world. And I guess it is, you get tunnel vision and all that. Every entrepreneur gets that. But I realized there was a lot of other things happening in the world. And more interestingly, I realized that there was other things I could be good at. Because I felt that I was so good at this one thing that I had worked so hard on. How could I possibly be as good at something else? Or maybe I couldn't at all. But I got into it. I decided to start. That time was very, my sort of my personal thing came to an end. My business came to an end. I had to start from scratch. So it was like a new beginning for me. But as it turns out, I like to teach. I think it's very interesting. And what's more interesting is I started talking about design. I started thinking about and writing about and listening more about what was happening around me in terms of design, and especially Indian design, fashion design. Who are the people who are really doing interesting work? Where is fashion going? Where is design going in India? What do you understand what do you mean by Indian design? How diverse it is in the sense of how we have people like me, small entrepreneurs who are building brands or brands that have gotten really big, and then you have retail brands, and you have a whole ecosystem of the fashion industry is basically an ecosystem, right? And in my space, in leather accessories, it's still a very small space. It's growing really rapidly now. So now I'm more interested in seeing what other people are doing. I'm more interested in talking about design. So now I'm sort of also hosting a webinar. I've been doing it with Amit and Shrishti since April. It's called Design Lounge. And now it's kind of become a part of my work. So now I actually, now of course, after walking from Vitasta, I came back and I set up my own studio. So I still have a small studio. I have a small studio where I work now as a consultant, as a designer. And I work on different projects, and I also teach. And now I've started doing this webinar series. We've just finished it. We're going to do another season in a month from now. We're going to start a new season. We did 10 episodes. It went great. But what I've realized, I suppose, to bring it all together, to circle back to what I was saying, I realized that I feel like I have like a second career to start now. I have a second beginning, and I have to figure out what that's going to be. But I'm sort of happy about the fact that I can look at something different from a larger perspective, and sort of see different aspects of design that I didn't think of before. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Look, it's brilliant, Aditi, because it's very difficult and very challenging and very it's heartwarming to realize that you could actually break away and be brave about it and move on. But only when you move on to something else, you realize there are other aspects of life, and which is also what design really teaches you, that unless you let something go, you can't find something else, because if you get too stuck to, and which happens very often to a lot of us, that we make these very strong ideas about ourselves, and then we stick to them. And of course, we probably right, and nothing's wrong about any of those ideas. We fail to get different perspectives of life. So I'm glad that you could do that, and you could actually find another path which makes you happy, and which makes you smile, and which makes you learn a lot more. So I'm sure you will get back to your love for bags, which is not. I mean, I'm sure you're still working on leather somewhere or the other.
I am. But I think I will. You know, I think it's. I'm very open to the idea that I might start a second business. I might start an entrepreneurship again. But one of the key things I've learned is that I understand what my skills are now. So I think I'll always do it with somebody else who can actually come with complementary skills about running a business, having a cash flow, studying P&Ls, getting the business aspect of it, management. So I think the learning for me now, I could start another business. I could do another startup or a brand or anything like that, or maybe I just go work for somebody else. But I think I realized that I know where my skills are. I think what it's taught me is that I'm very good at what I've done and what I do, but maybe that's just design and not so much business. I think it took me a while to separate the two. I think I thought that if I'm a good designer, I must be a good entrepreneur, or I must know also how to run a business. It should be an automatic, it should go together. But I realized that, I'm a designer, maybe not so much a business person. So I probably need to find somebody to work with who knows the business and who knows how to run a business. And I can focus on doing what I love, which is doing design, working with, leather goods design, building a brand, building a product which has a place in the market and has an audience and has has a purpose for being there in the first place. So I think what I'll do in the future, if I ever do it again, if that happens, is probably do it with someone else. But I understand now that I think as designers, we are not really taught how to run a business. I think either you're naturally an entrepreneur, a lot of people, a lot of great entrepreneurs are. Otherwise, you really have to learn it in a sense, and you have to have that sort of that thing. And often it doesn't come up. Often happens that in my case, I think I failed at running a business, but I don't think I was unsuccessful. I make a differentiation between the two. I think I don't think I was unsuccessful in what I did. I did fail at something because I did try, and I'll be honest, I did set out to do something and I couldn't do it. But I think I wasn't unsuccessful. I think I walked away with a lot. I think I walked away with stuff that I can't substitute in any other way. I don't think it's possible to substitute it and get it any other way. So yeah.
Awesome. So in a way, I would like to just say thank you, and you leave us with a very lovely learning that life goes on. Not every story is a success, but it is worth listening to, and it's beautiful that you're brave and you keep doing what you're doing, and you always do it with smile, because I've always seen you. With all the things that happen and all the trouble that you go through because of the people around you, you're a very, 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 you're the biggest sport I've seen. It's really heartwarming to see how sportingly you accept all things that happen around you. So thank you very much on behalf of MGT. But what we'll do is we'll open up the floor for the questions, and I'll probably kind of stop the live stream so that we can go and take it more casually ahead from here. So thank you very much once again, Aditi,
Thanks, guys.
on behalf of everybody here.